A few weeks ago, I moved to a bustling city. I needed a fresh start and decided to try dating apps to meet new people. I'm an introverted graphic designer, so working from home is my norm. My apartment felt safe, a comfort in the busy chaos outside. One night, I was swiping through profiles when I got a message that stunned me. It was a photo of me, taken from outside my window. I froze, my heart racing. Who would do this? I thought it was some kind of prank. I brushed it off, but a creeping unease settled in the pit of my stomach. Days went by, and things got even weirder. I matched with someone who mentioned a cafe I had just visited. How did they know where I was? My skin crawled as I read the message. Then came others that felt too personal, like they were written by someone who knew me better than I knew myself. I tried to ignore it. That night, I saw a shadow outside my window. I pressed my face against the glass, straining to see better. My heart pounded. Someone was out there, but they melted into the darkness as I blinked. I convinced myself it was just my imagination. But the strange encounters kept coming. I walked around the neighborhood, hearing the voices of my matches in my head. They talked about places I had been, things I liked. I started to feel like someone was following me. Every time I heard footsteps behind me, my pulse quickened. I would turn around, but nobody was there. Maybe it was just my anxiety playing tricks on me. One evening, sitting on my couch and scrolling through the app, I saw a familiar name light up my screen. A knot formed in my stomach. I should have unmatched right then. But just as I was about to, a new message came through. I see you. I felt ice in my veins. I thought maybe I was letting my fears get to me. I shut my eyes, trying to wish the paranoia away. Then, it happened again. I was walking home one night, and I saw the shadow again lurking just out of sight. This time, it stepped forward. My heart raced as I recognized the form. I heard a voice say, "Emily, why don't you reply to my messages?" I turned quickly, but nobody was there. What was happening to me? It was like someone was watching me, and the feeling became stronger every day. I felt them everywhere now, in the cafes, on the streets. I couldn't escape. I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The last time I looked outside, the streets were clear, but I could feel eyes on me. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew I wasn't alone anymore. There was a presence that watched and waited, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I didn't sleep well that night. Every creak in the building sounded like someone making their way to my door. I awoke at dawn, exhausted and terrified. My heart was still racing from the night's events, and even the morning light felt like a thin veil covering my fears. I needed to get out of the apartment. A walk in the fresh air would help clear my mind. I put on a hoodie, and as I stepped out, I felt the familiar knot of anxiety twist in my stomach. I tried to shake it off. It was just a short walk, I told myself. Just a chance to breathe. As I wandered through the streets, I could feel my nerves slowly unravel. People bustled about their morning routines, and for a moment, I found a sense of normalcy in their movements. I stopped at the cafe I frequented, hoping a hot coffee would help ease my nerves. The barista gave me a warm smile, a nice reminder that I wasn't completely alone in this city. But as I waited for my drink, I caught sight of a figure outside. A man stood across the street, his eyes locked onto me. My blood turned to ice. I couldn't see his face, but something about the way he watched made my skin crawl. I fumbled for my phone, but before I could take my eyes off him, he took a step forward. Then, he raised his hand holding a phone. I blinked in disbelief as he took a picture of me. My heart pounded in my chest. Fear gripped me hard. I glanced around frantically, looking for the barista or anyone to help. But in a split second, the man vanished into the crowd. Shaking from the encounter, I grabbed my coffee and hurried back outside. What was happening? I couldn't shake the feeling that it was connected to the app. The thought of someone watching me through my window, taking photos, seemed almost impossible. Yet here I was, alone and vulnerable in the middle of it all. I hurried home, but the sensation of being watched never left me. I locked the door behind me and leaning against it, I took a deep breath. I needed answers. I couldn't just sit here waiting for the next message or shadow to appear. That's when I decided to go through my matches. Maybe I could find someone who knew more than they let on. I opened the app with shaky hands. Scanning each profile, one name stood out among the rest, Mark. His profile didn't just mention the cafe. It detailed my routine, things I hadn't shared with anyone. I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't just that he knew me. It was that he had been watching me. Suddenly, the shadow of a man from the cafe flashed through my mind. I needed to confront this. I reached for my phone to message him. As I typed a simple question, demanding to know how he had so much information, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was behind me. The hairs on my neck stood up. It wasn't just paranoia anymore, it felt real. I turned slowly, heart racing. Someone was in the house. I stood frozen for a moment, my breath caught in my throat. The living room was too quiet, too still. I could feel the pulse of adrenaline racing through me, heightening my senses. I listened intently, straining to hear any sound that might give away the intruder's presence. Then I heard a soft shuffle, just beyond the hallway. My heart sank. I glanced around for something, anything, I could use for protection. I grabbed my keys from the coffee table, clutching them tightly in my fist, ready to defend myself. What had I been thinking? This was not a game anymore, this was real. I took a tentative step forward, my breath shaky. "Hello?" I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. There was no response. I moved toward the hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last. The fear wrapped around me like a cold blanket, making everything feel unreal. As I reached the edge of the hallway, I glanced back toward the door. It was shut tight. I wanted to run outside, but I couldn't shake the feeling that if I left, I'd be abandoning my only line of defense. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the bathroom. My heart dropped. Someone was definitely in my house. I felt a surge of determination. I couldn't let fear control me anymore. I had to confront this. I crept toward the bathroom door, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I could hear the faint rustle of movement inside. With a swift motion, I shoved the door open. Empty. The bathroom was empty. My pulse raced as I swung my gaze around, scanning for any sign of the person who had been there just moments before. The window was cracked open, a breeze fluttering through the thin curtain. Had they escaped? I peered out, half expecting to see someone standing in the alley below. But there was nothing. No one in sight. I wanted to scream. I slammed the door shut and leaned back against it. What was going on? Was it all in my head? That's when I spotted a small piece of paper on the bathroom counter, just below the mirror. My gut twisted as I picked it up. It was a hastily written note, the letters jagged and barely legible. "Stop looking for me. I'm always watching." A chill swept through me. This was no longer just a game. I felt my fingers tremble as I slipped the paper into my pocket. Someone had invaded my space, violated my sense of safety. Their presence loomed over me, heavy and threatening. I needed to find out who was behind this. I couldn't stay in my apartment, not now. I had to go back to the cafe and confront Mark. Maybe he had answers. I quickly gathered my things, each movement a reminder of the urgency pressing down on me. As I stepped out of my apartment, a shiver ran down my spine. That feeling of being watched returned, stronger than ever. I couldn't shake it off. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see a figure lurking behind me. But I was alone in the hallway, or so it seemed. My heart raced as I hurried down the stairs, determination quickly replacing fear. I would find the truth, one way or another. Then, just as I reached the ground floor, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, heart pounding. A new message from Mark flashed on the screen. "You shouldn't have gone into the bathroom." I stood there, the phone still vibrating in my hand, my mind racing. Mark's message sent an icy shiver down my spine. What did he mean? Had he known what was happening in my apartment? I tapped on the screen, my fingers trembling as I typed back, "What do you mean? Are you okay?" Before I could even hit send, the screen went dark. My heart sank. The battery was dead. I cursed under my breath and raced out the building, glancing over my shoulder one last time. It felt like something was lurking, but the street was empty. The cafe wasn't far, but every second felt like an eternity. I dashed through the evening air, desperate to get answers. The familiar smell of coffee mixed with anxiety filled my senses as I approached the cafe. As soon as I stepped inside, I spotted Mark at a corner table, his forehead creased with worry. But the expression on his face shifted as he caught sight of me. It was a mix of relief and fear. "Where have you been?" he asked, urgency lacing his voice. "I've been trying to reach you." "I got your message," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "What are you talking about? What's going on?" Mark hesitated, glancing around the cafe. It was small and cozy, but in that moment, it felt claustrophobic. "It's not safe here," he finally said, keeping his voice low. "You need to trust me." My stomach twisted. "Trust you? You're the one who got me involved in this mess." I was shouting now, attracting unwanted attention. I lowered my voice, forcing out controlled breaths. "Who is watching me?" He leaned closer, his eyes darting around. "You have to listen. There are things I didn't tell you before." That noted serious. "What do you mean? Who are you?" He looked away, biting his lip. "It's complicated. There are people, something bigger at play. You've stumbled into something." I took a breath, trying to grasp what he was saying. "What about the intruder?" His expression darkened. "That wasn't just an intruder. They're looking for you. You need to get out of the city." My pulse quickened. "Leave? That's insane. I can't just run away." Anger and fear mixed inside me. "I need answers. Going back home won't help." "I promise, you're not safe here," he insisted, glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to walk in. "Can you trust me to help you?" I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of deception. But the look of panic on his face felt all too real. My mind raced through my options. But I knew I couldn't stay here any longer, not with the threat lurking. Then, just as I made my decision to leave, the bell above the cafe door chimed. A figure walked in, tall and cloaked in shadows. My breath hitched in my throat. I recognized him immediately. It was the guy from the dating app. "Mark," I whispered, panic rising. "It's him. He has come for me." Mark's eyes widened as the figure fixed his gaze on me, a smirk creeping across his face. The air felt electric with tension. What had I gotten myself into? My heart raced as the figure approached our table. The cafe, once a grounding oasis, felt increasingly like a trap. I clutched my coffee cup, suddenly aware of how out of place I felt in my own skin. "Isn't this a coincidence?" the stranger said, his voice smooth like honey, but laced with menace. "Fancy seeing you here." "Who are you?" I shot back, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I'm someone who's interested in a deeper connection." His eyes flicked to Mark, who was still frozen, watching the interaction unfold. "But it seems you've been keeping secrets." "Leave us alone," Mark said suddenly, standing up. "You need to go." The stranger chuckled, shaking his head lightly. "That's cute, really? But you don't understand the situation you're in. We both know that you need me." "Need you?" I echoed, my voice rising as confusion and fear collided. "What do you mean? What do you want?" He stepped closer, and I instinctively moved back, our small table barely creating a barrier. "I just want to help. Or perhaps I should say, I want to guide you toward the truth." Mark's hand shot forward, grabbing my wrist. "We can't stay here. We have to go now." The tension in the cafe thickened, and I could feel the eyes of the other patrons on us, but none seemed willing to intervene. I felt trapped under the weight of his gaze. "You think you're safe?" the stranger sneered. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." If you walk out of here with him, you'll be making a huge mistake. Is this some kind of joke? I shot back, desperate for clarity. What's going on? What truth? Before he could respond, Mark yanked me towards the door. Come on, he hissed. In a panic, I turned to face the stranger one last time. What do you know? He smirked, a menacing glint in his eyes. I know that whoever you're running from will find you. They always do. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach as Mark pulled me out of the cafe and into the night air. The world outside was a blur. We sprinted down the street, my heart pounding against my ribcage. I hardly noticed where we were going, only that I needed to get away. Where to? I asked, still breathless, glancing back. Did he follow us? Mark shook his head but didn't answer. He seemed lost in thought, processing the chaos. I could see the gears turning in his mind as we turned down a narrow alley, hoping to lose any pursuers. Mark, I pressed, fear creeping back in. Tell me what's happening. He paused, leaning against the wall. You don't understand. It's bigger than both of us. That man has information. But he's dangerous. I've seen what he can do. Then why not tell me? I whispered, feeling the weight of his words. The urgency clawed at my gut. What are we dealing with? But before he could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed behind us. My stomach dropped as the shadow of another figure loomed closer. My breath hitched. I could feel the danger tightening around me like a noose. Suddenly, everything went dark. The streetlights flickered, and with a crackle, the power cut out. I stumbled back, disoriented. Mark's grip tightened on my wrist, pulling me deeper into the alley. My pulse raced, amplifying the panic in the sudden darkness. I could barely see anything, but I heard the footsteps grow closer. What do we do? I whispered, trying to suppress the tremor in my voice. Mark's eyes darted around, scanning for an escape. We need to find a place to hide. Just stay quiet. I nodded, though fear made it hard to focus. We edged down the alley, desperate for cover. Graffiti adorned the walls, chaotic splashes of color that felt alien in the oppressive darkness. Then I heard a low laugh, that same honeyed voice echoing from the cafe. You can't hide from the truth, he called out, taunting us. You'll find it eventually. Just ignore him, Mark said through clenched teeth. Keep moving. We slipped into a small doorway that led to an abandoned shop. The air was stale and filled with dust, but I was grateful to be out of sight. My heart still raced, but adrenaline pushed me forward. Why did you take me to the cafe? I asked, trying to catch my breath. You could have told me outside. Because it was safe, Mark replied, glancing back at the door. You don't get it. There are things happening that you can't understand. Then help me understand. I pleaded. This isn't just about me. We're in danger. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration washing over his face. Fine. But you have to promise to keep your head down. That man, he's part of something bigger. He's connected to all the elements of your past. Connected? What do you mean? But before he could elaborate, a loud crash echoed from the entrance of the shop. My heart stopped. Someone was forcing their way in. We had to move. Out the back, Mark urged, pointing toward a narrow stairwell that led further into the shadows. We sprinted down the stairs, adrenaline coursing through my veins. As we reached the bottom, I turned to Mark. What does he know? Who is he? I'll explain later, he said, breathless. We just need to get out of the city. They're closing in. Then, as we glanced around the dimly lit basement, I noticed something unusual. In a corner, partially hidden by boxes, lay a small backpack. It looked out of place, almost as if it had been waiting for us. That's when I saw it. An emblem stitched on the side, a symbol I recognized from a dream, a memory that danced just out of reach. It felt significant, almost like a key to everything I needed to unravel my past. Mark, look! I pointed, my breath catching. What does this mean? His eyes widened with recognition, but before he could answer, the voice from the cafe drifted down the stairs, sending chills down my spine. "You're not going anywhere." The fear washed over me again, and I realized this was just the beginning of a nightmare I wasn't prepared for. The backpack beckoned to me, its presence both comforting and unsettling. I took a cautious step toward it, my instincts warring with the fear clawing at my throat. "Mark, what if it's don't touch it?" he hissed, grabbing my shoulder. His grip felt like a lifeline in the chaos swirling around us, but the urgency in his voice sent a fresh wave of panic through me. "We can't just leave it here. It might help us," I insisted, my eyes glued to the emblem. It was a circle encasing a flame, familiar yet distant. Something deep within me stirred as if it recognized that symbol, triggering flashes of a past I couldn't access. "Listen to me," Mark urged, voice low. "That man knows what you're after. If he finds you with that, we'll have bigger problems." Before I could argue, a shadow flickered in the light of the narrow basement window. The voice from the cafe echoed in my mind, weaving through the confusion. "You're not going anywhere." "Let us go," Mark said, urgency creeping into his tone. "We have to keep moving." I hesitated, torn between the mystery of the backpack and the immediate threat looming in the darkness. Reluctantly, I backed away. We needed a plan. Just then, the door creaked open, light pouring in and illuminating a figure silhouetted against the frame. My breath caught as I recognized the silhouette. It was him, the man from the cafe. His smile was unsettling, all charisma and menace. "Did you really think you could escape?" His voice dripped with amusement. "This game has just begun." "Mark, we need to," I began, but Mark was already moving, pulling me deeper into the shadows of the basement. I followed, my instincts now screaming at me to trust him. We rushed through a narrow corridor lined with damp brick walls, our footsteps muffled against the ground. I could feel the man's gaze lingering, heavy like a fog. Every instinct in my body urged me to run faster. "Where are we going?" I gasped, trying to keep up with Mark's quick pace. "There's a service exit at the end. We can get out that way," he said, glancing back to ensure we weren't being followed. "Just keep your head down." We rounded a corner, and my heart raced as the faint glimmer of light broke through ahead. My hopes surged as we neared the exit. But when we reached it, a sickening realization settled in. The door was locked. "Mark, this can't be happening," I said, panic swelling. "Help me look for a way out. There has to be something." His eyes scanned the walls, but I could see fear creeping into his expression. Just as I opened my mouth to suggest we go back, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. They were close. Too close. "Now!" Mark shouted, and we dove behind some forgotten crates, pressing ourselves against the cold wall. The footsteps grew nearer, and I held my breath, the world around me fading into silence. Then I heard him again, that honeyed voice, smooth and calm. "You can't run forever. The truth will always find you." My heart raced, knowing he was right. But I couldn't let fear win. I needed to understand who he was and what he wanted from me. I glanced at Mark, his jaw clenched tight, eyes dark with determination. He didn't seem to have answers yet, and neither did I. But one thing was clear: I wouldn't rest until I uncovered every secret, even if it put me deeper into danger. As the footsteps faded away, a new fear settled in. If he was telling the truth, we might already be too late. The silence hung between us like a thick fog. Mark peeked around the crate, his body taut with tension. I could see the fear in his eyes mirroring my own. We had to act quickly before he found us. "Do you think he left?" I whispered, biting my lip. The longer we stayed in hiding, the more the claustrophobic space pressed down on me. "I don't know," Mark replied, his voice barely audible. "We can't stay here." I felt trapped, each second stretching into an eternity. What if he's waiting for us to come out? His eyes darted to the locked door, then back to me. "We need to go back. Find another way." "Back to him? Are you insane?" My pulse quickened at the thought. I shook my head, trying to clear the panic that threatened to consume me. But just then, the faintest sound reached my ears, a low tapping, like fingers drumming against wood. It came from just beyond the door. I held my breath, straining to listen. Are you kidding me? Mark whispered, awareness dawning on him. Yes, right there. Not for long, I said, my mind racing. An idea sparked. If he is distracted, we might slip by. Mark looked skeptical. And if he is not? I straightened, my core tightening with resolve. We'll have to take that risk. I gathered every ounce of courage I had and crawled toward the end of the corridor, inching my way closer to the door. Shadows danced along the walls, and my heart pounded louder with each breath. Mark followed, hesitating but pushing past the hesitation. The sound outside shifted, a muffled voice, that same casual tone. No one can help you now. A chill ran down my spine. He is taunting us, I muttered. Stay low, Mark cautioned, already crouched beside me. With one last glance at each other, we both pressed our backs against the wall. The door loomed ahead, a false promise of escape. I gritted my teeth, readying myself. Suddenly, our luck turned. The door creaked open just a fraction, and illumination spilled into the dark corridor, a sliver of opportunity. I gestured to Mark. Now! In one swift movement, we dove toward the light, heartbeats thundering in our ears as we slipped through the crack, grasping the doorknob with trembling hands. But before we could fully escape, a hand shot out to grab my arm, yanking me back. Where do you think you're going? His voice hissed from behind. Mark lunged forward, pulling me along, but the man had a tight grip on my wrist. I felt my pulse race, fear and adrenaline surging through me as I struggled against his hold. Everything you're running from will follow you, no matter how far you go, he sneered, leaning close, his breath hot against my skin. Let her go! Mark shouted, determination flaring like fire in his eyes. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something glinting on the ground, a shard of glass. In a split second, I made my decision. Spinning around, I swung my arm back and crashed the glass into the man's hand, the sharp edge biting through flesh. He yelped in pain and released me, staggering back. Run! Mark shouted as he pulled me free. In that moment, my fear crystallized into action. We sprinted through the doorway and into a world painted with daylight, but we had no idea what waited for us outside. The chase had only just begun, and I could feel the man's presence still looming, urging us to uncover the truth that was now chasing us both. What if it was worse than we imagined? I couldn't dwell on that now. All I knew was that we needed to keep moving. That's when I saw a figure watching us from across the street, a familiar face in the chaos. My heart sank. I squinted, trying to make sense of the face. It was Sarah, my old friend from college, her features twisted with concern. Part of me wanted to call out to her, but the other part screamed for caution. We had just escaped a dangerous situation, and I couldn't let my guard down. Mark, over there! I hissed, pointing at Sarah. His eyes widened. Is that who I think it is? But before I could finish, the door behind us slammed open, the sound reverberating into the street. The man stepped into the light, his expression a mix of anger and vindictive pleasure. Run! Mark shouted, grabbing my wrist. We darted towards Sarah, hoping she'd understand our panic. As we got closer, I could see that Sarah didn't look like herself. Her usual playful demeanor was replaced with tight lips and furrowed brows. What's going on? She demanded, voice strained. We need to get away, I gasped, glancing back at the doorway. The man had started to follow, his frame solid and unyielding. I can't. I'm expecting someone. Her words caught me off guard. Sarah, now is not the time for this. We need to move, Mark pleaded, pulling me closer to her, but the hesitation in her eyes was unmistakable. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she whipped it out. I couldn't see the screen, but her face paled further. He's coming for me, she whispered, backing away from us. Panic flickered in her expression. I thought I was safe. What do you mean? I asked, bewildered. Then I heard heavy footsteps echoing behind us. The man was almost there. Sarah, just trust us. We can figure it out later, I urged, both desperation and a familiar tension rising in me. But her eyes betrayed her fear. "I can't just run." "You don't understand." Before she could finish, Mark shouted, "We don't have time." Just then, the man stepped into our line of sight, and a jolt of fear shot through me. He was closer than I anticipated, dressed in dark clothing, eyes narrowed dangerously. "Friends, are we?" he called, his voice oozing contempt. "You think you can escape?" A surge of adrenaline propelled me. Without thinking, I grabbed Sarah's arm and pulled her down the street, urging her to follow. "Come on." She hesitated, looking back at the man, but the fear in her eyes finally overrode her indecision. We ran, each step pounding against the pavement, hearts racing together as a team. I didn't know where we were headed, but any direction was better than the one we were leaving behind. My mind was a whirlwind of questions. Why was Sarah here? What had she gotten mixed up in? Did she know this man? Who was that? She finally asked, breathless. "I don't know," I shouted, trying to focus on staying ahead. "But he's dangerous." As we turned a corner, I spotted an alleyway. Without hesitation, I yanked Mark and Sarah with me. We ducked into the narrow space, pushing ourselves against the damp brick wall. The sounds of our pursuer's footsteps faded slightly, but not enough to ease my nerves. I tried to catch my breath, my heart thudding loudly in my chest. "What now?" Mark asked, his face pale. "Maybe we can sneak out the other end?" I suggested, but my throat tightened with worry. The thought of facing him again left a heavy weight in my stomach. As I peered toward the alley exit, something caught my eye, a flickering light in an old, rusty dumpster nearby. I froze. It looked like a phone, illuminated and buzzing sporadically. "That's mine." "I must have dropped it earlier," Sarah said, but something in her tone didn't sit right with me. My instincts screamed for caution. "We can't risk it. We need to focus on getting away from him." Just as I turned back to Mark, the fear on his face stopped me cold. "What if he's right behind us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before I could respond, I heard the sound of approaching footsteps again, closer this time. My heart sank. "I think we're out of time." And then, just as I adjusted to brace for a confrontation, everything spiraled into chaos when the light flickered and went out completely, engulfing the alley in darkness. In the suffocating darkness, panic surged through me. The air felt thick and charged as I strained to hear anything over the pounding of my heart. I clutched Mark's wrist tightly, hoping he could calm my spiraling thoughts. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice low and steady. I could feel his body tense beside me, ready to spring into action. I could almost hear the echo of our pursuer's footsteps fusing with the rapid thump of my pulse. "Is he still out there?" Sarah's voice quaked with uncertainty. "I don't know. We have to move," Mark replied, determination weaving through his fear. Just as Mark took a step forward, my hand slipped free from his grip. I pulled back, the chill of fear rooting me to the spot. "What if he knows we're here?" "They can't find us if we don't move," Sarah chimed in, panic creeping into her voice as well. "But we need to do something." Something flickered in the back of my mind, igniting a desperate will to fight. I couldn't let fear control me, not anymore. "We need to find a different way out," I said firmly, but the uncertainty looped through my mind like a broken record. As if responding to my thoughts, I heard faint footsteps easing into the alley. The familiar voice echoed from the darkness, taunting like a snake lurking in the underbrush. "You think that hiding will protect you?" Mark's hand closed around mine again. "Run!" he suddenly shouted before breaking into a sprint down the alley, dragging Sarah and me behind. I darted after him, the darkness swallowing us whole. My feet stumbled against debris and scattered trash, the clatter amplifying my dread. If we didn't find a way out quickly, we might just become trapped their next target. We sprang out into a narrow side street, adrenaline surging through us. "This way!" Mark shouted, pulling us down another alleyway lit by flickering street lamps, the faint glow illuminating the fear etched into our faces. I followed blindly, desperate for safety, but part of me couldn't shake the nagging feeling that we were still being pursued. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see him rapidly closing the distance as the shadows danced ominously behind us. "Shoo!" Mark hissed, realizing we were drawing attention. "We can't let him know where we are." Sarah leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. "Why are we running?" she demanded, anxiety twisting her voice. "Who was he? What does he want?" "I wish I knew," I replied, a hint of frustration in my voice. "But we don't have time to dig into this now. He's dangerous." The sounds of footsteps picked up again, muffled yet insistent. The force of dread clawed deeper into my chest. "He's coming!" I shouted, pushing Sarah and Mark ahead of me as we scrambled for cover. "Over there!" Mark pointed to a small doorway slightly ajar, and we hurried inside just as a figure emerged from the street. We pressed ourselves against the wall inside an abandoned shop, our breaths heavy with fear. The world outside faded away, soundlessly roiling in the absence of light. "Is he still out there?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling as she peered through the door. "I don't know. How are we ever going to get out of this?" My voice cracked under the weight of despair coursing through me. But as Sarah turned back towards me, the glimmer of determination sparked in her eyes. "Maybe we should confront him," she said suddenly. "If he's telling the truth about knowing something, he might be able to help." "Help? Are you out of your mind?" I felt anger rising. "He's the one making us run." "Maybe," she conceded, "but what if he has answers to the questions we don't even know we have? We've already come this far. Isn't it worth finding out?" Mark looked between us. "I don't like the idea, but she's right. We need the truth whatever it may be. But what if he's watching us right now?" My heart raced in response to their proposition, the thought unraveling my fragile grip on reality. But before any decision was made, my phone buzzed in my pocket, jolting me from my spiraling thoughts. I hastily pulled it out and my breath itched. There it was, an unknown number, the screen glowing ominously in the dim light. "What now?" Mark asked, shifting uncomfortably. My finger hovered hesitantly over the screen before I finally tapped answer. The silence on the other end was palpable. I held my breath. "Emily." The voice was smooth, smug, and all too familiar. "You can't run forever. We need to talk." The air turned thick, and Mark shot me a panicked look. "Is he? Do you want to find out?" The voice interrupted, continuing with relentless ease, "Meet me at the old warehouse by the river. You'll find answers. Alone." Before I could gather my thoughts, the call ended. I stood frozen as the implications unfurled like a storm in my mind. "What did he say?" Mark demanded, urgency threading through his voice. "Something about meeting at the warehouse," I said, my voice tinged with uncertainty. "Are you insane?" Mark exclaimed. "You can't seriously consider that." "Maybe we should," Sarah countered. "This could be our shot at truth. A chance to end whatever this is." "Going into a trap isn't going to end anything," Mark protested, but the fear in his eyes said it all. There was no easy choice, the uncertainty loomed larger than ever. But something deep down nudged me with a sense of urgency. "We need to go," I said finally, resolve hardening my voice. "We can't let fear decide for us any longer." Mark clenched his jaw, but after a moment he nodded. I sensed him weighing every option in his mind. We needed to find the truth about the terror chasing us because somehow, I knew I was meant to confront this, to unravel a web of dark connections that had once kept me confined in fear. And with that thought echoing in my mind, we stepped back into the night, ready to face whatever lay ahead, unaware that the truth was waiting as a shadow in the darkness, shifting and changing just out of reach.